Hello everyone and welcome to another class of Physiology for Engineers with Professor Gonzalez-Fernandez at Lehigh University. Today we are going to look at the respiratory system and I'm going to have a different series of videos. The first video is going to focus in the components of the respiratory system and the different tissues that form the respiratory system. So first we are going to look at the different components. So we have three different components in the respiratory system. First of all, we are going to have the airways. Then we're going to have the lungs. And finally, we're going to have the rib cage, which is going to protect the lungs and the airways and also has an important role in the maintenance of the pressure, as we are going to see in the following video. Okay, so first we are going to look at the airways. So the airways, they are going to allow for the air to enter in our lungs. So we have, for example, here the nose, we have the mouth, we also have the pharynx. So the pharynx has two different openings, one that will go to the digestive system and the other one that will go to the lungs that allows for the air entrance. And then we have the larynx. And finally, we have the trachea. So these airways, they are made of cartilage, of fibrocartilage. So let's represent this in orange. So this cartilage is really important because it's going to keep our airways always open so the air can flow very easily into our lungs. And they don't only have this cartilage, they also have the airways epithelium. So I'm going to do a little schematic in this area here of the airway epithelium. So we are going to have different types of cells in this epithelium. And the main function of the cells in the epithelium are going to be, first of all, to maintain airflow. They're also going to increase the temperature to 37 degrees of the air, right? So when we are, when it's winter here in Pennsylvania and it's really cold outside, the airways are going to warm up the air that we breathe. Also, is going to increase the humidity of the air. So it's going to make our tray is going to pump water into it so we can absorb it more easily. And finally, also is going to protect from infections or microorganisms that can be in that air, or like, for example, allergens or other particles that might be in the air that we breathe. So this epithelium is going to be formed by specifically two different cell types. So let's have here, so here we'll have the cartilage, right? And then we have here the different types of cells. So the first type of cell that we have here are the ciliated cells. And then, so we have here the ciliated cells with the nuclei. And then we also have a different type of cell which is not going to be ciliated, and this is going to be the goblet cell. So the goblet cell is not ciliated, but inside of the goblet cell we are going to have a lot of deposits of mucus. So this goblet cell is going to secrete the mucus that is going to cover the epithelium of the airway. Okay, so this will be the mucus. And this mucus is going to protect our airways and our lungs from the entry of different pathogens. So the goblet cells are going to secrete the mucus, and then the ciliated cells are going to bring inside the airways different ions. So it's going to bring it chloride and it's going to bring sodium, and through bringing this chloride and sodium, very important, is also going to transfer water to maintain and increase the humidity of the air that we breathe. there are different pathologies that can affect the epithelium of the airway. The first very important pathology is smoke, so please don't smoke, because the smoke is going to destroy here the xylated cells, so it's going to get rid of the xylated cells, right? So if we get rid of the xylated cells, we decrease the humidity, and also we won't have this ion exchange. And what it's going to make is going to increase the amount of goblet cells, so we are going to increase the amount of mucus, and this is going to be bad because we are going to increase the chances of getting an obstruction of the airway. So the second pathology that is going to affect the epithelium, which is a genetic disease, is called cystic fibrosis. And cystic fibrosis is a disease in which this ion exchange and water exchange is impaired. Okay, so now that we have seen the airways and the structure of the epithelium and the different diseases that we can have in the epithelium, let's go to the lungs. So after the trachea, we have the bronchus. So, and then we have the bronchioles, which are the ramification of the bronchus or bronchi. Bronchioles. And then finally, the bronchioles are going to further ramify until we arrive to the alveolar sacs. And the alveolar sacs are really important because in this part of the lungs, we are going to have the gas exchange between the blood and the lungs to receive oxygen or to get rid of the CO2. So these bronchus and the bronchioles, so the bronchi and the bronchiole, they are not made of cartilage. They are made of a smooth muscle. So let's put it here in purple to distinguish. So these are made of a smooth muscle. And this is really important because a smooth muscle can increase or decrease the diameter depending on the local concentration of different components. For example, oxygen or CO2, or also as well nervous excitation or the presence of certain hormones, okay? As we have seen in the regulation of the autonomous system. So then if we go down, so finally we go to the alveolar sacs. So the alveolar sacs are really important because the exchange of gases is going to happen at that level in the alveoli. And they are not made either of cartilage, they are not made of a smooth muscle, they are made of respiratory membrane. So this membrane is really important to allow for the exchange of gases between the alveoli and the blood vessel. And also the alveolar sacs, they are very highly vascularized. So we have all these blood vessels coming in so they can perform the exchange of gases with the alveoli. Okay, so let's go now to the other components. So to continue with the lungs. So in the lungs also is really important the pleura or the pleural membranes. So the pleural membranes, we have two of them. So we are going to have one pleural membrane that is in contact with the lungs, and this is called the parietal pleura. And another pleural membrane that is going to be in contact with the rest of our body. So this is called the visceral pleura. And between both pleural membranes, between the visceral pleura and the parietal pleura, we have water. And this is really important because this is going to originate a change in pressure between the lungs and the outside of our lungs, which is going to be really important for the gas exchange, as I'm going to explain in the next video. Okay, so we are finished with the lungs. The last component is the rib cage. So the rib cage is formed by the muscles and the bones that are going to protect our lungs, and also they are going to participate in the exchange of air. So in regulating the pressure that we are exerting of our lungs to get that gas exchange at the alveoli. So we have different components. So the first component will be the ribs. So the ribs, they are going to protect here our lungs, and between the different ribs, we have these muscles here that are going to allow for the movement of the lungs, right? And the movement of our rib cage, which are the intercostal muscles. And we have a final component of the rib cage, which is also very important for the movement. When we breathe in and breathe out, which is here, this muscle here, which is the diaphragm. Okay. So I think this is complete for this part of the lecture. So the different parts of the respiratory system: airways, lungs, and rib cage. The airways are made of cartilage, and then we have this epithelium that is really important for the modification of the air, for temperature, and also to protect our body from microorganisms, and it can be affected by smoking and other diseases like cystic fibrosis. Then we finally have the lungs, in which we have the bronchus and the bronchioles, which are formed not by cartilage, they are formed by a smooth muscle. And this is really important for the contraction or the expansion of the bronchus and the bronchioles. Then we have the alveolar sacs that are going to allow for the exchange of gases, and they are composed of this respiratory membrane. And then finally, around the lungs, we have the pleural membranes, the visceral pleura, and also the parietal pleura. And between the two pleuras, we have this layer of water. And finally, we have the rib cage that is formed by the ribs, the intercostal muscles, and also by our diaphragm. And they are going to allow the change in volume and the respiration to happen. And they are also regulate the pressure, as we are going to see in a sec. Okay, so I'll see you right back for the second part of this video.